1 a.m. I'm your chairperson, Keone Souza. We have Vice Chair John Whitehead IV. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Ahuna?
Eo.
Trustee Akaka? Trustee Akina? Trustee Alapa? Trustee Galutaria? Chair Kahele? Trustee Lindsay?
Present.
Trustee Waihe'e?
Present.
Chair Souza?
Yo. Mahalo members, we have quorum. Now, joining the trustees here today is Kauponui Keishawn, along with numerous support staff. I'm going to call on Keishawn to announce the administrative staff joining us here today. Aloha, Keishawn.
Aloha Vice Chair, mahalo nui no kia halavai. This afternoon, we have with us from administration our interim administrator and CEO Summer Silva, our investment director and interim CFO Ryan Lee, our general counsel Everett Ota, our managing director of real estate Daniel Sandemeyer, our directors of communications Bill Brennan, and our IT systems engineer and administrator Arlene Aguinaldo. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Keishawn. All right, this meeting can be viewed via live stream on OHA's website at www.oha.org/livestream and on Olelo TV. If you'd like to testify on any agenda item during the Zoom meeting, please raise your hand when the item is announced. When called upon, you'll be moved from attendee to panelist and given the ability to turn your camera on and unmute yourself during your testimony. Once you're finished, we ask that you mute your microphone and you return to attendee. Public testimony should be limited to matters listed on the meeting agenda and will occur prior to any listed item's conclusion or vote. If you begin to address other issues not on today's meeting agenda, the ILM chair will call you out of order and direct you to limit your testimony to items listed on the agenda. Testifiers' mics will be unmuted when it is your turn to testify. If you're not audible, you'll be muted, and the next testifier will be called. Oral testimony online will be limited to 5 minutes. Your mic will be automatically muted once you have completed your oral testimony, or if your allotted time for testimony expires. Please log off after testifying, otherwise staff may be forced to remove you. All right, members, our first item of business is the approval of minutes from the Committee on Investment and Land Management dated April 29th, 2026. Anyone signed up to testify?
No testifiers.
Can I get a roll call vote?
Trustee Ahuna?
Yes.
Trustee Akaka? Aye. Trustee Akina?
Aye.
Trustee Alapa? Trustee Galutaria?
Aye.
Chair Kahele?
Aye.
Trustee Lindsay?
Aye.
Trustee Waihe'e?
Yes.
Chair Souza?
Aye. All right, members, mahalo, motion passes. Now, the next item on the agenda is item number 3. And this is informational briefings in regards to the Native Hawaiian Cultural Center Feasibility Study Interim Project Report by AEA Consulting. Anyone here to testify? We have Jermaine.
Yes, we have Jermaine
Jermaine.
Myers.
I'd also like to make note that Trustee Akina as well as Trustee Kahele, Chair Kahele, both joined us. Hello, Jermaine.
Aloha, Chair. Is it okay to testify?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Aloha. Aloha, honorable trustees of the Investment and Land Management Committee. My name is Jermaine Myers, an OHA Native Hawaiian beneficiary. I am testifying today regarding the Native Hawaiian Cultural Center Feasibility Study presentation by AEA Consulting. First, I want to be clear that many Native Hawaiians support the vision of a Native Hawaiian Cultural Center. Native Hawaiian culture absolutely deserves investment, preservation, and spaces where our people, especially our youth and future generations, can learn, gather, heal, and thrive. I appreciate that today's presentation acknowledged the importance of language, storytelling, hula, voyaging, intergenerational learning, and Hawaiian-centered spaces. However, after reviewing the board packet and listening carefully to prior ILM discussions on the matter, I remain concerned that important foundational components of a true Native Hawaiian cultural feasibility framework are still missing or underdeveloped. A Native Hawaiian Cultural Center cannot simply become another development concept or visitor destination. It must be rooted in place, culturally accountable, community-driven, financially realistic, transparent in governance, and clear about beneficiary outcomes. The feasibility framework should more clearly address cultural stewardship protections, governance accountability, beneficiary-centered programming, intergenerational impact, commercialization boundaries, tourism limitations, and long-term Native Hawaiian operational leadership. I was encouraged to hear discussions about hula, language, storytelling, voyaging, healing practices, and community gathering spaces, but I believe the feasibility study should also more deeply evaluate lo'i and mala education, la'au lapa'au and traditional healing knowledge, archives and oral history preservation, youth mentorship, workforce development pathways, homestead and land stewardship education, Hawaiian language immersion integration, and protections against over-commercialization of Native Hawaiian culture. A true Native Hawaiian Culture Center should not simply showcase Hawaiian culture. It should actively perpetuate Hawaiian culture. I was also concerned by statements during the April 1 ILM meeting where consultants acknowledged they are not experts in Native Hawaiian culture and are primarily providing a framework based on other projects. According to DCCA business records, AEA Consulting LLC is a foreign, New York-based consulting firm that only recently established a business license to operate in Hawaii since December 3rd, 2025 by members Adrian and Elizabeth Ellis. That reality makes transparency and community trust even more important. Beneficiaries deserve clarity regarding the procurement process used, whether Native Hawaiian-owned firms were solicited, the total contract amount, who participated in the selection process, and how Native Hawaiian cultural practitioners, kupuna, educators, and community leaders will be meaningfully involved moving forward. Because ultimately this project will only succeed if Native Hawaiian trusts both the vision and the process. I respectfully ask OHA to ensure this feasibility study remains Hawaiian-led, not New York-led, beneficiary-centered, and grounded in long-term cultural stewardship rather than outside frameworks or commercialization pressures. Kia kuapu, God bless all of you.
Mahalo, Jermaine. Before, any other person signed up to
No other
testify?
testifiers.
All right, before I recognize Daniel Santameyer, I'd like to thank AEA, Daniel, Catalina, and Jess. I believe Jess is on as well. This is a fully Kanaka-led initiative. I just want to get that straight on the record. We have support from outside influences and experience and to help us conduct research and due diligence. And so that's why EEA is here today. They've established a lot of relationships and, at the same time, they've learned a lot in this process and they will continue to learn and document our feedback that we get from community leaders as well as cultural experts. So mahalo nui. With that being said, I want to call up Daniel Santameyer to the table. Hello, Daniel.
Aloha.
Aloha. Yep. You want to introduce the team? You have anything you want to say ahead of the EA Consulting presentation?
I don't have a lot to introduce.
Okay.
These guys have been started. I think I'll just, and you've already introduced them, but I'll repeat it again.
Yeah, no, we can just go ahead and turn it over to Daniel.
Daniel,
The other
I'll
Daniel.
introduce Daniel. Thank you very much.
Hello, Daniel. You can take it away. But,
Thanks, Daniel.
Daniel Santameyer, you can stay at the table just in case we have any questions. Mahalo.
Thanks, Trustee Souza. Thanks, ILM committee and trustees for the opportunity to come present to you this morning about additional progress in the feasibility study for a Native Hawaiian Cultural Center. As noted, I'm joined by my colleagues Catalina and Jess, who've been working alongside me on this process. You can go to the next slide. So the last time we met with this group in early April, we reported about the consultation that's been done with community members and community leaders in Hawaii, and we wanted to progress that and share how the concept is beginning to take shape, and that will continue to progress forward through this feasibility study, and then beyond as you potentially take it forward, depending on decisions at the end of the feasibility study process. I think it's still on the first slide on my screen, but whoever is advancing the slides can go ahead to the next one. Thanks. So based off of the consultation and learning that we've done, as well as continued feedback from the OHA group, we defined a series of what we call focus pillars for the Native Hawaiian Cultural Center. There are 4 that we would call sort of the core areas of focus for this emerging concept, and then 3 more that would take on a secondary focus but still be present within the center. Those areas of core focus are around welcome and gathering for Native Hawaiians, but also extending beyond to bring other people to experience and engage with the culture. To think about education and learning, and bringing forward understanding of Native Hawaiian culture within their communities and beyond. Number 3, presenting and showcasing, so creating new engagement with cultural forms, hula and music and food and so on. And 4, developing partnerships and connections across the community to create new relationships intergenerationally, and intergeographically, and with people perhaps who have moved away from Hawaii, but come back to experience this center. The 3 then pillars that take on a secondary focus are around preservation and archiving of Native Hawaiian culture, developing new resources and offering professional development, training, potential internships, things along those lines for cultural makers and people who support that. And then finally, some opportunities for research and innovation, so that what is at the Cultural Center isn't just about the past, although that's an important piece of it, but also something that carries forward into the future and continue to support Native Hawaiians as in contemporary making. So the emerging concept is indeed a cultural center that's focused on elevating traditional Native Hawaiian cultural practices, but it doesn't just leave it in the past. It brings these arts and cultural practices today and allows people across Hawaii and beyond to engage with them, but also provides opportunity for looking to the future as well, and generating new experiences even within these historic practices. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Catalina to speak a bit more about some of the specific program types that we've thought about. Catalina.
Thanks, Daniel. So we identified 7 program categories that reflect the breadth and vitality of Hawaiian culture. And the goal of course, the center would be to really be activated all year round, and for Native Hawaiians, locals, and visitors to really be able to not only see and experience the culture, but also learn about it. So these are the 7 categories. So we have interactive exhibits, performances, immersive experiences, classes and workshops, community luau, culinary workshops, and special events. And what we did was also identify 4 value pillars. And the idea is that these program strands deliver against those 4 value pillars. So we have presenting and showcasing. So we have performances and immersive experiences in that category. Then we have education and learning, where we have classes, workshops, and interactive exhibitions that will be that opportunity to learn more about Hawaiian culture. Then we have welcoming and gathering, so being a space that is welcoming to the community and really fosters this coming together, sharing around food and different kinds of events in the culture. And then partnerships and connections, so really thinking about how to bring different cultural organizations together around Hawaii and Oahu that are already doing amazing work, and being a place for them to also showcase their work. And that goes from halaus to artists all across the island. We can go to the next slide, please. And so you can see the 4 value pillars here and the 7 different program categories. And then on the left side, you can see this access from public to more exclusive, or let's say private programs. So the majority of programs and things available at the cultural center would of course be open to the public. Really the only thing that we think might be more exclusive or more private might be some special events. So we've talked a lot about throughout this process that the center could be a welcoming space to welcome dignitaries and delegations, voyaging delegations, to host conferences or private openings for new collections or exhibitions, networking events, celebrating different cultural moments across Hawaii. And so these events, depending on what they are, might be a little bit more exclusive, but really everything else would be open to the public, again, from the interactive exhibitions to the classes to performances. And you can see here as well where some of these touch on specific value pillars. A lot of these really cut across all 4 of them, but some of them are more specifically connected to 2 or 3 of them. And so what we've heard from the different stakeholder consultations that we have and the work that we've done and our research, and really are trying to embed ourselves as much as we can in the culture, is that these different outcomes are really key and really important for Native Hawaiian Cultural Center. And that includes intergenerational knowledge sharing, so creating moments that are really organic for people to come together from the keiki to the kupuna to share different aspects of Hawaiian culture, whether that's culinary or whether that is hula or other different things like that. And that can also be connected to immersive storytelling experiences. So when we were talking about interactive exhibitions, that might be where this comes to play. So really thinking about how you create really immersive place-based experiences that allow the visitor to feel like they are really part of the Hawaiian experience. And so, we talked about voyaging maybe as being one of those things, but it could really be anything. But really thinking about how you go beyond telling a story through an exhibition and bringing it to life in a more dynamic way. Of course, the most important outcome is to really ensure that the center primarily serves Hawaiians, but also still remain welcoming and open to other people, locals and visitors, tourists, anybody who wants to come and learn more about Hawaiian culture. We also talked about a key outcome being flexible space, making sure that there's space available for organizations to come perform, to utilize the space, to come practice, and really for the community to be able to use the space in a variety of ways, and make sure also that the center is constantly activated and feels vibrant and full of life all year round. And then finally, for the design of the building, to really focus on being physically a welcoming space, and to visually also convey that the center is the sort of gateway to Oahu, given its location in Kaka'ako, and just being a prime place for the water to connect to the mountain, and for it to just be a place where culture is celebrated and lived and experienced. Pass it over back to Daniel.
Thanks, Catalina. So we've also started to outline then what it would take to create a home for all of these different activities that we've started to talk about within this concept. And so, of course, these are for continued refinement, but just to give the committee here gathered some idea of the sorts of ideas that are being talked about. Spaces for the core of the public programming that we're talking about, indoor, outdoor performance space that can provide some of that showcase, the immersive exhibition space that is aligned to some of those concepts that Catalina is talking about, making these areas come alive. Rehearsal spaces that could be multifunctional, and so provide space for hula or other performances to rehearse, but also be turned into event spaces or gathering spaces for other community uses as well. certainly classroom spaces for educational opportunity and archives to bring the history into the space and allow people to make use of it as well in their creative practice. And we've talked about a voyaging and maritime learning area, particularly as a connection to the water there, but also as a way to bring that element of the culture to the forefront, and in maybe some ways that aren't done as actively right now. We've also then got a series of spaces around welcoming gathering, a space that, you know, in some sense is a lobby and allows people to come in, but also can be done for protocol and allowing those dignitaries and other important guests who are coming in to be appropriately brought in and welcomed into the space. And gathering and meeting spaces for events, both for the community, but also potentially alongside some of the dignitary. We talked about the private events a second ago, and there could be spaces in this for that as well. We do have some commercial spaces, not to over commercialize, but rather to allow Native Hawaiians to engage with what they've made and purchase those. But also these spaces do need revenue sources, and they need a way to be sustainable operationally. And so we're thinking about retail spaces or the beginning of what could be a cultural marketplace. And also thinking about a cafe or restaurant associated with the commercial kitchen that could then support some of the events elsewhere around the cultural center. And then this is, finally not just an interior space, but something that is connected to the land. And so the indoor-outdoor aspect of this could be brought forward through, a dining area that's outside, or, a luau, a space for the luau's to happen, and then a garden that could contain some of the native plants, some of which could be then brought into the educational spaces as well, for people to learn how to engage with them and bring them into healing practices or culinary practices or different ways that they are made use of. And of course, behind all this are other necessary administrative and support spaces that we're thinking about and are bringing in other examples from places around the world, not just around Hawaii, but we've examined case studies and benchmarks from New Zealand and the Caribbean and other places around the U.S. as well, to help inform scales of these spaces and size of these spaces, and how you might align them within a future feasibility study. Excuse me, within the future cultural center that will continue to test in this feasibility study. And you can go to the next slide, which speaks then to next steps. So as to take those spaces, of course, building in any feedback we get from this group or others during this process, detailing it out further. We will start to think about what governance models are for this, how you develop the right partnerships with different aspects of the community there, and make sure that it is something that is Native Hawaiian led, and is also something that continues to build out opportunities for people to learn about how to operate these sorts of spaces locally and intelligently, and do so in a sustainable way. And lastly, develop the business plan and an operating pro forma for the concept. As I said earlier, it's one thing to build these spaces, but you want them to last a long time, and so there needs to be a sustainable plan behind it from a business perspective as well, and where you can find the funds to continue to support it and continue to be a benefit for the Hawaiian community there. So that is what we have to report for today. And of course, look forward to your continued feedback and others' continued feedback about the concept, to make it as strong as possible as we continue the feasibility study process. Thank you.
Mahalo, Daniel and Catalina. Members, any questions for our AEA team? All right, seeing none. Daniel Sandemeyer?
Respectfully, if I could.
Absolutely,
have some time.
sir.
Thank you. Thank you for the testimony earlier. And I just want to clarify and make some comments to address some of the concerns that were raised. This did go through a normal procurement process, involved several trustees and administration. It is, as you mentioned, a Kanaka-led, Native Hawaiian-led effort, and we want to make sure that our beneficiaries understand and appreciate that level of care and commitment. And AEA is an expert in this that we solicited from a group and found, and as they said, it's world-class. They have world-class references, and we're very excited about the product. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel, for clarifying. Appreciate that. Trustee Ahuna.
No, thank you, Chair. I think that was a great presentation. I'm just looking ahead. That presentation was awesome. And this past week, we just had some great examples of what they're all talking about. When we visited the island of Maui, we saw Maui Multicultural Arts Center, how they can change these centers and like move the seats and rows and stuff like that. But more so, we had a person come up and talk about this culture center that they're building, and it speaks to all these little narratives that you guys were talking about today, and what we want to see. So I was excited. That trip was amazing, because I think we can see what we want to, to be developed. So thank you guys for your presentation. And I know our trustee has something to say, our Maui trustee has something to say about it. Thank you so much.
Chair Emerita Lindsay.
Thank you. I just wondered time-wise, this is an update for the trustees. So what more do we have before we can move on?
Yeah, maybe Daniel, if you don't mind talking about Daniel Payne, of course, talking about the timeline and the next steps.
For sure. So, moving ahead, I mean, we've been working in the presentation was distributed a couple weeks ago, so we've been continuing to move ahead with developing the space plan and starting to outline different potential governance models that we've been in conversation with some of the OHA staff. The next steps from here, as we need to settle on some of those. We don't have to have a final answer, but I think as informing the pro forma and the operating model of the space, we need to have some direction from OHA around which of those models are maybe most likely within that. And then we've been gathering benchmarks and other information to help inform the pro forma and the operating business model that I spoke about earlier. The plan is to continue to develop that over the next 6 weeks or so. And so hopefully by mid to late June, we'll have a completed iteration of the feasibility study for this concept.
Daniel, Chair Kahele.
Hey, thanks, Chair, and great presentation by the AEA team, and thank you so much for your hard work. It was great to meet with you and your team a few months ago when you were doing the, I guess the, stakeholder engagement process. Talking to not just OHA trustees and staff, but cultural practitioners and lineal descendants and neighboring communities in that area. I guess my question is specific to the site and the land use analysis. In your opinion, and given the work that and the expertise that your firm does, obviously we're biased at OHA because we have our 9 acres in Kaka'ako-Makai, and we've talked about Native Hawaiian Cultural Center as being an anchor in our future development of the Kaka'ako-Makai lands. But in your opinion, and I bring this up because other communities have talked about other areas where there can have where there may be a culture center, whether it's out on the Waianae Coast or out in Sand Island and other places throughout the state. But in your opinion, as far as the site and land use analysis, why or why not is Kaka'ako and our Kaka'ako-Makai area an appropriate or an inappropriate location for this project?
Sure. Happy to address some of the things we've thought about on this front. I mean, I think one of the reasons that it is appropriate is its relatively central location in Honolulu, and the connections that you can make from a transportation and access point of view. I mean, that's, I think, one of the things as you think about specific sites, access from a transportation point of view, whether that's parking, whether that's public transportation, is very important in spaces like this. It's a place for connection, and so if you want people to be able to get there and make use of it, and so those are certainly an important consideration as you're thinking about sort of specific sites within Kakakamukai, as well as sort of broader planning here. Also, and I think Catalina referenced this as some of the concept, but the history of the place, its connection to the water, it sort of seems wholly appropriate for Native Hawaiian culture as well. And I think we've liked thinking about that with some of the people we've been able to engage with, also within the concept development opportunities about what are some of the specifics about that element of it that we might be able to bring forward that could make this distinctive and unique. And while there's certainly models from around the world that you can look to, this would be distinctly Hawaiian in how it brings those into the elements here. Some of the things that maybe make it not ideal, I would say, are just, it's, I reference them as just in the transportation connectivity, public transportation in particular. I think we've heard maybe some people say that some parts of Kakakamukai aren't as easily accessible there. I think that could be bridged, but it's something that you want to consider along the way. And then, there's always competing opportunities, not just on this land, but any place you might put it. So that's something you want to think about it. We think this could be fabulous and a real opportunity to elevate Native Hawaiian culture in this place and in that specific site. But you also have to think about, what are other opportunities for beneficiaries, or other places you might put it around Oahu or even other places around Hawaii. So those things need to be taken into consideration along the way.
In the work that your team does in looking at a comparative analysis, are there other similar indigenous or cultural centers that you guys have worked on, where, not just, of course, here in Hawaii, but throughout the United States or even internationally, that you can benchmark against in terms of this project?
Yes, and we have done it. There's a couple of excellent ones in New Zealand that we've looked at as a part of this project. We've also worked on one in Australia for Indigenous Aboriginal cultures that we brought some of the learnings from into this. Also, I guess I'm not sure, it wouldn't exactly be framed in the same Indigenous way, but we're working on a project in the Caribbean right now, in Barbados, that we've talked about with the OHA team about what it's sort of a contemporaneous development. It's in process right now. All the elements have already built. So what they've learned along in that process, that something like this might learn from along the way.
Great. Thank you so much, Mahalo, Chair.
Of course, we know the site is not finalized. That would be decided on by this body here at this table. But also, just simply bringing back Kanaka to the urban core of Honolulu. And no greater thing than that. I got the thumbs up from Trustee Hona. Right on. Members, any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none. Mahalo, Daniel. Mahalo, Catalina, and Daniel Senemeyer. All right, members. Thank you. Aloha. Members, we are now moving on to our final item on the agenda. Gonna ask Vice Chair Wahe.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Any testifiers? Any discussion? If not, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Ahuna?
Yes.
Trustee Akaka? Trustee Aki? Mahalo. Trustee Akina?
Aye.
Trustee Galuteria? Chair Kahele,
Aye.
Chair Lindsay, sorry. Trustee Lindsay, Trustee Waihe'e,
Yes.
Chair Souza.
Aye. Motion passes. Meeting is now adjourned. Mahalo.